Greetings, salutations, and good now. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. And in today's video, we're going to be doing our weekly forecast for this week, the 12th of July. I can't believe it's the 12th of July. All the way down until the 18th, 19th or so. And actually, I was sitting back, meditating, contemplating, and asking ancestors to sort of take the wheel. Astrology is a very powerful tool. We look to astrology to answer, these hard hitting questions in our life when it comes to, our destiny, fate, certain areas of life that are quite important to us, like our love life, family, money. And so there's a great deal of caution as a forecaster, someone who's, trying to project onto this physical plane as to what we could look forward to. Now, astrology for me isn't standalone. It's quite important to go and interact with nature, the different primordial elements, the earth, the air, the water, the fire, just the whole combination of them all, and just observe what, nature in itself is doing, because these planets or these placements, aspects, they have, or we should see correlation with, our physical world, also with our physical bodies, right? There's the anatomy that goes with, you know, the astrology and the astronomy. Okay, so what's happening this week is quite powerful. We don't have much major aspects. However, we still have that configuration with the outer planets. I'm still trying to decipher what it all means, how it's affecting me. Is it something that is building, because it's trines and sextiles, and trines and sextiles, easy access, easy flow of these energies, doesn't seem like it's difficult for them to interact and interface and influence each other. And we're talking about Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius retrograde, and Uranus in Gemini. you know there's this interesting type of triangle thing. And then the inner planets have a interesting story as well. Sun is in Cancer, currently conjuncting Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is kind of going back onto the sun. And so we see this as, you know, our mentals, right? The mind, how we communicate, process information, share that information, and ultimately, gain wisdom, right? Because we have to apply it. So, we're thinking and communicating or reprocessing, kind of going back, doing things that help us to align, right? Sun and Mercury start aligning, and then Mercury is going to continue going backward. And so, that's something to look forward to. However it may affect you, I want to be a bit more careful as to how I really project and forecast. But we know that's happening, and that's going to be, prominent for today, for the next couple of days. I like to give it a 3-degree orb. And so Mercury retrograde conjuncting the sun, and also, moving up to this new moon, which is basically the highlight of this week. And there's no other major aspects. And so just this conjunction with the retrograde and the new moon. And so how do we see this affecting us personally, our local environment, and also how we perceive the world, right? Astrology is personal, but it's also, you know, transcendent, meaning it transcends just our personal experience. And so we should be seeing Mercury in retrograde conjuncting the sun, affecting everybody. And we should be seeing, this effect or influence or ramification of the new moon. Otherwise, the universe is a lie, right? How we call it, the universe a liar, right? Can't be. It can't be. We're the liars. Humans would lie, but the sun, moon, stars, come on, they're honest, right? They're honest guys. Okay, so let's get quick and dirty. Let's get quick and dirty with Mercury retrograding onto the sun. So we could just extract a few things. Sun is, moving forward, and Mercury is going back onto the sun. And so Mercury again being thinking, communicating, processing. Maybe Mercury could be some signifier in your chart. Maybe Mercury could be a person, right? A thing, a mentality, a mindset. And retrograde, things appear to go backwards. And so we try to infer, you know, a sort of backward movement, whether we're, redoing something, retracing, retracking, reinvestigating, reorganizing, recalibrating, reinvestigating, refinancing. We go a bit more internal, and so our external, expressions or communication might be a bit delayed, or it may be passive. Some people suggest, however, that retrograde, that moment of, okay, we need to take a few steps backwards before we could finally have this big push forward, is quite important, and it's all happening in the Cancer space, or the space that derive these traits from the fourth house, which should be happening more particularly in the private life. And so it may not be something that everyone could see, maybe more experienced by the people that are in, your private life behind closed doors, sort of under the table, family, or just people who make you feel super safe, protected, with that ability to, to grow and to, push forward and to do your thing. And so, Sun conjuncting, we already talked about, the retrograde, or however, it being a signifier of maybe a person or thing or mentality or idea, kind of coming back to you, or you going back with this idea to again recalibrate it, retest it, re-examine it, reaffirm that this is true or false, and make the necessary adjustments. And so we embrace the retrogrades. When it's happening, and conjuncting Sun, or Mercury and Sun coming into some sort of alignment, but Mercury is going back into the Sun, and so bringing back something for, the Sun to action, right? Some information, some knowledge, some idea, some new way, or a renewed way of initiating new ways of communicating, more emotionally communicating in a way that really connects, organizing your mind and your thoughts, that they are relative to goals, and also relative to the people that you're communicating or working alongside. Maybe a sense of, again, this Cancerian energies, home, private life, roots, ancestry, and so connecting back to certain things that take you back to a certain point in life that you're trying to remedy or heal. It's almost like shadow work, trauma work, ancestral work, breaking generational curses by, you know, kind of just going backwards to a point in time where, okay, maybe you didn't really understand life, and so you couldn't stand up for yourself, you couldn't really be in your true power or authenticity. Maybe you were stifled, and instead of, being bold and courageous, you just, had to experience, that stifle, congested environment. It could be so much things that we could, experience during this Mercury retrograde in Cancer. I mean, it talks about your private life, people, places, things, circumstances, situations, and activities that make you feel comfortable, that make you feel safe, that make you feel protected. And so that definitely taps you into family, like everybody, all the characters in your family or in your childhood. It taps you into memories. And so Mercury retrograde in Cancer is very, very powerful and very, very deep, just depending on your awareness, what your mind is on, right? And so with astrology, there's definitely a certain level of destiny and fate, but you have a personal choice, where your awareness is. Um, and I wonder if that in itself is destiny, that you're destined to be on this certain conscious frequency at this divine moment in time. However, I think there's certain choices that you could make to elevate your frequency or to stay on a low frequency and a low vibration. Anyway, back to getting down and dirty. See, Mercury, again, thinking, communicating, processing information, processing Cancerian or fourth house influence things, processing your childhood, processing your memories, processing your roots, processing your ancestry, processing and thinking and even communicating, whether it's verbal or inverbal. So we could be communicating to our through our body language, through our actions, through just a whole multitude of things. For example, today I'm gonna put myself on a cross as an example, right? But today, as some of you may know, for a brief moment staying at my mom's house while my apartment is getting furnished. So today I was gonna clean the shower, and I remember as a kid, sometimes I would dread having to go in and clean the shower. And so, I mean, who wants to bathe in a dirty shower, right? So I went into, clean up the shower nice and clean. I mean, it's new moon, so you're cleaning, it's new things, new mood, new emotions, and all of that. So you got to be doing a lot of cleaning, smudging, and all of that type of stuff. Okay, so we're cleaning, and it's like, boom, some songs, some old gospel songs that my mom used to play just kind of come back into my mind. I was like, you know what, let me just go back and play those songs and go clean the bathroom. And it's like I was reliving a childhood memory, and instead of reliving it in a negative, painful, stifling, traumatic, oh, woe is me, I gotta listen to these gospel songs and clean the house, it's like I was doing the same thing, but with a new mood, right? With a new emotion, with a new way of reacting and responding. That's more moon. Moon is in Gemini right now, helping us to be a bit more mutable and adaptable. So I could see how that is bleeding in. But just the Mercury aspect of thinking, communicating, playing music, right? Communicating, even with, the smudging and the incense that I had in the bathroom, just that whole, aura, atmosphere that you were creating. Cancer, right? Retrograde being, me kind of revisiting, old memories and kind of remixing them and reinfusing them in a new way. And so that's my personal example of Mercury retrograde in Cancer kind of applying onto the sun, right? Because we know the sun is how you do things, and in this life is not so much what you do, it's more about how you do it, right? Your heart space, your intentions, and being, on the right side of the influences or the right side of nature. Okay. Sun. I mean, this before we move on, the Mercury retrograde, is going to continue. I'm not really sure how long this one is going to be because they vary. I'm not sure if Mercury is going to end all the way back in Gemini. I think she's going to end all the way back in Gemini, and so there's going to be quite some time of Mercury kind of revisiting, reanalyzing, introspective, giving us this ability to sort of like time warp in a way mentally and go back in time to restore, fix, revisit certain times in life, and bring remedy to situations, which is a sort of form of, what is it called? I don't know the word, but it's time travel, but also like fixing like timeline type of thing. Anyway, don't want to get too deep into that. We're here for the astrology. Okay, so that's the overview, right? Of course, we could get a lot more complex, a lot more personal, depending on what house you have, all of this happening in. For example, if you have this happening in your first house, then, you know, things that are super personal to you, the people, places, things that deal with your personality, your ego, how you see the world, how you personally interact, um, and express yourself, right? Mercury retrograde kind of, things that deal with you personally. If it's in the second house, your body, your money, your property, your resources, your values, your moral systems, your self worth. If it's just a broad topic, you could just put that as your money, right? If it's happening in your third house, um, community, siblings, local, geographical location. If it's happening in the fourth house, it's private life. So it just depends, like, which house you're having this placement in, and it could get a bit more specific. For me, I'm having it in the fourth house. That's why I'm at my mom's house during this Cancer season, and all of those examples that I gave previously, right? And I'm sort of blessed with a sort of chat that is kind of easy to read, right? So that's my gift. And my chat is sort of easy to read. It's a gift and a curse, but my host is aligned in a simple way. Okay, new moon. Let's move on to the new moon because that's going to be at its height on the 14th. Now the new moon. I've spoke a lot about new moon. I mean, it's an astrology channel, and the moon is shifting around a lot. And the moon is very, very important. It's the closest luminary to Earth, right? And so it's super important. It relates to our emotions. It relates to the lightest one of the lightest bodies that we created for ourselves, which is like the heart space. And so that tender soft space that we have to keep layering and layering and layering to protect. And the moon, I mean, there's a lot of different ways for us to describe, the influences of the moon, or the lunation of the moon, rather, and then how that would affect us. And so the example that I want to present today comes from I wouldn't say one of my teachers, but I just follow him on YouTube. And so Dolo, one of the examples that he gave of the moon was relating it to a snake, and how a snake is shedding its skin. And we also, as humans, we shed our skin. I haven't shedding skin in some time, but as a kid, I remember, I think on your finger or someplace on my arm, sometimes it would get a bit. Anyway, even here on the island, we used to have snakes, and then the snakes were eradicated by the mongooses, that I think the French or it was the British who brought them in, and so we lost a lot of the folklore and culture and spirituality that comes from observing and interacting with snakes. But if you look at a snake or something in nature that could shed its skin um, during a full moon, you would say that the emotions or the, I don't want to say the animal or the beast, but let's say the moon is fully clothed, right, with the cloth or the light of the sun. It's fully clothed. And so when you're fully clothed, then you're fully clothed. You don't need to be putting any more garments on. And so this taps us into the conversation of how we interact with the moon during the different phases. And because we're at a new moon specifically, just about to, have the new moon or experience the full moon rather, then you know we need to know how to be acting accordingly so that we're on the right side of the energies. Now, I started out with full moon, fully clothed, so that we could go into new moon, right, which would be fully naked, right, fully naked, when you have the opportunity to put on a new suit, put on a new garment, put on a new armor, put on a new mode or personality or way how you want to approach or interact with your current environments based on all of the experiences that you would have experienced from the past moons, right? And so that's why it's important to you know have a consistent lunation practice, or at least observation and journal, so that you can know what your mood was and how you were able to ride the highs and mitigate the lows. Also, with the lunation, when the moon is waning, okay, it was full and it's waning, and after it's waning, I like to say we're gaining, but it's only for a certain portion, right? Because we're taking off, we're gonna be full, for a few, and so we enjoy that, right? We enjoy that. And then while we waning is like we start taking the clothes off, and we could still enjoy it for a certain portion. Maybe we take the hat off, we could still enjoy the outfit, take the sun shades off, still enjoy the outfit, take, you know what I'm saying? So you get it undressed, but at a certain point it's like, okay, you're getting ready to get naked, you're taking off, you're releasing, you're cleansing, you're purifying, right? um Before you could start the whole process of suiting up again. And so during the waning, like third quarter, you know all of those time, even now up to the waning, is like the moon is draining, and these things that you're taking off, right? Everything you're taking off based on the party that you had, the conversation, esoterically we're speaking, all of the interactions, all of the sweat and alcohol and whatever, I'm saying, that's on your clothes. I'm saying is like you're gonna go take that clothes, take all of that experiences, I'm saying, and you're gonna go wash it, make it new, right? But not forgetting, least we forget, the party that we had, so we know next time what we need to do in order to enjoy the party again, or maybe we know what we need to do to prepare ourselves so we could potentially enjoy the party if we didn't enjoy the party, right? All of this is esoteric and poetic, what I'm saying, trying to stick to the example. And so during the new moon is like, okay, we take all of that off, we're reflecting, and then we're thinking about how we could you know enjoy this party again, and then we put all of those clothes in the washing machine, what I'm saying. We do the washing, we're still waning, it's what I'm saying, washing, purifying, cleaning, all of those things that we're doing right now. And then on the new moon is like, boom, we're gonna go put a new suit, suit on, right? Or start putting on different pieces of the article. It's not like we put the whole suit on, because by the full moon is like, okay, we put the whole suit on and we're gonna be enjoying, you know what I'm saying, before we start to do the whole shedding and taking off again. But it's just to give you an example of how we could kind of interact with the moon to do our, moon magic, and just make astrology a bit more practical, right? It's good to just observe and, be a participant, or observer, but, at some point you need to move from just an observer to a participator, right? An active participant. And believe it or not, we're all participating in our own way, shape, or form. And so just be more conscious and more aware of our participation with the whole lunation cycle and the other cycles that are happening with the other planets. But because the moon, again, is the closest one, it really, really affects, you know, the mood and the temperament here. I mean, it's closely linked to the tides and also the female womb and things of that nature. And so we know that it has a great effect. And so with this new moon, I mean, we still have a few more, a day and a half, 2 days or so. It's on the 14th, depending on your geographical location and the time. You could be a bit more specific, but we're getting ready to put on, you know, some new suit, a new personality, a new performance. It's a new, almost like a new chapter in the book per se. And so hopefully, what I'm saying, you could wash your clothes and got a new nice suit to put on. So this new suit that you put it on, what I'm saying, it could be attractive, it could be appealing, it could, stand up but also not be obnoxious or annoying. People could enjoy it and you could also enjoy it and be comfortable, and know that when you go back home and you get naked and you take off these clothes, you don't owe nobody for the clothes. You didn't have to you didn't have to jump over a million cactus trees or hurdles, you know what I'm saying, or go down into any swamps or bend over backwards or forward to get these articles of clothing or anything that you're manifesting during this point in time. If you're running with the poeticism of my delivery. Okay, so the new moon, quite powerful, quite powerful. um and so again, hopefully we were planting the right seeds during the certain portions of the waning. I don't want to get too specific. You could say maybe between 9 days before the new moon, you start really getting serious about like these new intentions or these new clothes that you want to put on. And you could even start, doing physical stuff, right? That whole process of, clearing your space, bringing an end to certain things, um, and even physically, like cleaning, clearing your space and cleansing and stuff like that. Anyway, I think this brings us just about to the end of the video, because that's what we're going to be experiencing pretty much for the entire week. So today is Sun conjunct Mercury retrograde, and then in 2 days, so that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, new moon. And then it brings us down into the weekend where the moon is going to start, waxing, and we start putting more energy into these new intentions and start putting on more clothing and taking on more of this persona that we're going into the fixated portion of the summer in. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that this full moon, the new moon, sorry, is going to touch into the Leo, and then we're going to have the full moon in Aquarius at the end of the month. And so that's something for us to look forward to. Anyway, major farewell until we meet or greet again. Kevis Major here. Just letting you guys know we're going to be doing Leo check-ins. So if you want to have an astrological check-in for the Leo season, send me an email at kevisbmajor@gmail.com or comment down below Leo check-in, and we'll get that sorted out for you. All right, until we meet or greet again, doing it major.